Even though the filmmaker Chantal Akerman is a strong critic of women degradation and exposes in her films the lies of the patriarchy and capitalism, as Jean-Luc Godard does, her moody films illustrate to us that we constantly frame the world in a certain way according to our historical understanding of it, current situations, and expectations, and as such cannot represent it the way it truly is or attain justice for good. For the religious believer and the idealist, the moral law is God's given or rationally given, and as such, we just have to follow it and be the moral agents that we were meant to or designed to be. But in fact, new lies, meaning examples of injustice, are constantly being discovered by us in history, since what justice means changes for us, and as such, attaining it is a constant struggle, rather than a matter of having faith in absolute justice and truth. In the past, including in ancient Greece, the just and the good were conceptualized and lived by, even though the law permitted slavery and abuse. Moreover, since man exists in the truth and the untruth at the same time, evil cannot be eradicated for good. Ackermann's films show what injustice looks like in contemporary life, but refrains from making prescriptive statements, since pedagogical art is monological and appeals to the absolute. She is obviously conversing with her audience and appeals to otherness and opaqueness. She wants her viewers to become strangers to themselves once again, in order to question what does it mean to be, for example, a woman, a father, a lover, an artist, or a citizen, to conduct a Socratic dialogue without resorting to pure reason and mathematics, to abstract reality, but to the concrete one, in which the nothing can penetrate into. In her film Jeanne Dielman, for example, Ackermann frames a world in which women are subjugated to male desire as a depressing and lonely one, which eventually drives the female protagonist to violence. But it doesn't have to be that way. There is yearning for new meanings to emerge in Ackermann's films, rather than a cry for their absence, out of despair. This is why her films are moody. While watching Ackermann's films, one wonders why she or he is watching this long take in which nothing happens. At these moments, the nothing comes to the foreground, since the passing of time and the sounds in the background are more felt. This anxiety propels the viewers to search for meaning on the screen, rather than being involved in the narrative or the characters' actions. But when they cannot find it, they begin to question their world and themselves, which in return gives them the motivation to be involved again in making history. Works of art, then, can attain a philosophical knowledge, since philosophy itself could and should focus in describing our preconceptual, habitual, and schematic experience. It is not the case that art could be philosophical, but philosophy is similar to art, and the question, which life is better, that of the philosopher and the scientist, or that of the poet, in which Plato and Aristotle wrestled with, consequently dissolves. Ackermann then does not reflect on the nature of time in her films, but tries to reconnect the audience with the moment of the inception of the image, in order to inspire the audience to begin something new in their personal, social, and political lives. Our imagination about the future can help to free us from the present. Alfred Hitchcock, a filmmaker she admires, creates emotions of fear and surprise on the screen and in the viewer's body, but Ackermann, through moods, create the condition for having these emotions without indexing them on the screen. Her films are receptive. They are affecting the viewers, but these affections also elicit a response from them. She herself begins her films without preconceived ideas, but anticipation for something new to come towards her, and often doubles herself and people in her life in order to create alterity and identity. Highly produced films want you to move forward with the narrative. Instead of reconnecting with the inception of the image, with birth, with the mother that creates and doubles, to the here and now, they want you to follow reason, the father that orders, stabilizes, and normalizes to an optimistic future. But this could lead to tragic results, as Hitchcock's films demonstrate. Since trying to reveal the absolute truth in the name of utopian dreams is just an attempt to relive the past, or better yet, to go back to a lost, harmonious past in a lost place, such as paradise or Atlantis. For Plato, the past is something one should come back to. But our existence is traumatic, which means that the past is sometimes something we want to avoid. In his film, Despite the Night, Philippe Grandrieux doubles the images and the characters in his film in order to blur the difference between the real and the imaginary, or the real and art. The genre of this film is psychosexual thriller, in which doubles are constantly hunting the characters. Since romantic and codependent lovers reflect and repeat each other, they always have an uncanny feeling. And when their lover dies or leaves them, they no longer know themselves. They lose their identity. Instead of trying to find themselves, they look for a substitution in the form of God or a new lover in order to flee from themselves once again. But in the psychosexual thrillers, the lovers mistaken the absent object of desire with someone else, the double, the lie, and as such, they constantly ask themselves, is she or he my lover? Who really is the one I love? And how can I know she or he loves me too? When they snap out of their delusion, they use violence in order to reveal the truth and restore harmony. The film is more intense, perhaps an experimental version of Hitchcock's Vertigo. Hitchcock's characters are Platonic and schizophrenic, since they believe the world they perceive is a lie and that someone inserted ideas in their mind as a result of disappointing romantic and codependent love affairs. For Plato, there is no room in reality for ambiguity, to absences, finitude, nothingness, and opaqueness, and as such, there cannot be doubles. The world of the senses, existence, is a lie, a copy, an imitation, and the world of reason, of essences, the invisible, is the real true world. This is the reason why in most of Hitchcock's films, the desires of the mind and the body are always in conflict. The mind of the protagonist moves towards the truth, but the body cannot, as in Rear Window and Vertigo. But unlike Hitchcock, Grandrieux is trying to stop his characters from following their violent fate, from going up to reveal the truth, literally, as in Vertigo, in order to grab the double, the lie, and kill it. Instead, his characters purposefully relieve their trauma with the double, in order to release some of the pain their past is inflicting on them in the present. But in order to overcome a traumatic past, there is also a need to experience new sensations, thoughts, and social relations, because these can help one to read the past differently, which works of art can afford it. Art then can allow for a new world, a future, to be opened, rather than only trying to bring something new, or lay out new foundations. Grandrieux's intense images are seductive, but at the same time repulsive. They don't allow the viewer to disappear in the image. He reminds us to be repulsed by violence, even if it means that at the end the truth won't come out and harmony won't be restored, as in Hitchcock's films. This might be better, since sometimes the double, the so-called new lie, can shed light on what we think is true, the past, the original, and motivates us to discover new truths, as Abbas Kiarostami's film Certified Copy and Alain Resnais' film You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet illustrate. When we experience the uncanny, what we thought of as familiar becomes unfamiliar. But exactly because we find ourselves not at home, we are motivated to change, even if it can be scary. This is why Ackermann decided to be a nomad. But it seems that she realized in her last film, No Home Movie, that one's home can still be a remote place and as such could afford change, rather than a place that confines you, defines you, controls you, and isolates you, as in Hitchcock's film Psycho. The protagonist in Psycho doubles himself and becomes a violent, immortal mother in order to keep the past alive and protect his home from strangers in the present. In order to overcome our desire for immortality that threatens to cancel out the meaning of life, we need to remember our ancestors and revive the past. But we cannot relive their lives as religious and idealist fanatics and mythical nationalists want to, out of desire to live once again according to absolute truths, in which what is real are only eternal, impersonal, abstract identities. Even though they can die, God, the ideas, and the identities they adopt while they are alive cannot. But the moment they begin to lose them as a result of social and political changes, they feel lost and threatened. Violence then, in many cases, is a protest against change, out of the need for harmony and our fear of loss. But both change and loss, for us, is unavoidable, because our existence is violent, that is restless, and finite, that is both positive and negative.